Hello and welcome to Matt's Mosh Pit, and tonight I'm going to be telling you about my recent trip to see Avatar at the Fillmore in Silver Spring, Maryland. But before I get started, I just want to say thank you so much for all the love and support you've shown me and my channel so far. It truly means a lot, and I could not do this without you. So folks, as mentioned, I recently had the opportunity to go see Avatar at the Fillmore in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I got to say it was quite the experience. And as you guys know, if you've been a fan of this channel, the Fillmore of Silver Spring seems to be the place. It's like I keep calling it my home away from home because really I feel like it's one of three places that play any of the bands that I want to see. And I'd say, quite frankly, that is the leader of the play. You know, it seems like everybody I want to see is playing the Fillmore. I love that venue and top notch all around. You know, the people are extremely friendly, and I think out of all the venues I've been to, I feel like they have the best security. The security is just insane. They're very on point when it comes to, you know, crowd surfing. I've spent a lot of time, let's say, at the front of the barrier where I could actually get a good view of security and how they handle things and all that stuff. And they are just top notch. And when they're not catching people who are crowd surfing, they're passing out water to definitely the first couple rows. And for me, I'm just always thankful for them. And I do kind of go out of my way to say thank you to them, especially at the end of the night, because they've done an amazing job. And quite frankly, it's a very thankless job as well. So kudos to the Fillmore Silver Spring. It holds about 2,000 people just for size perspective. This night was absolutely jam-packed. I didn't see a sign that said sold out, but I feel like it was sold out. It was just a sea of people. And so I feel like they definitely were at capacity this particular night. As always, I have to talk about the merch. And I'm not going to lie, this was like the most merch I think I've ever seen outside of Iron Maiden. They might have even had more merch than Iron Maiden. It was crazy. I'm used to seeing a couple t-shirt designs, a hoodie usually, maybe a signed album or something like that. And Avatar literally had multiple shirt designs, multiple hoodies. They had a Christmas sweater. They had, I think, sweatpants. They had they had everything. And, they had albums, they had signed posters, they had patches, everything you could possibly want, I feel like Avatar had. And so, that was crazy. And I would even say I went over to the alien weaponry section too, which they were opening up, and they also had, quite a bit of merch. It was just very merch heavy, which is super, super cool. I'm all for it. And that was almost overwhelming because when you're waiting in line and then you have to make your decisions, and not to mention this stuff isn't cheap, so you really do have to count your money and go, what am I willing to spend my money on, blah blah blah, all that kind of good stuff. But I love having options though, and I gotta say I don't think I've seen that much merch and for one band. Even just super, super cool from that perspective. Okay, so now it comes to the bands. There were three bands essentially playing. They had two openers and then Avatar. The first opener was a band called Spirit World, and they're from Las Vegas. I had never heard them before. Quite frankly, I didn't even know they were opening up. And so they came out, and I thought it was pretty interesting. They came out with a country song being played. And I know that, Avatar they really kind of play all different styles of music. So I wasn't even sure, are we going to get a country band? And, the band, they had these white, Western suits with cowboy hats and stuff like that. But man, once they started playing, there was no country at all. It was just straight up bombastic energy, and the crowd was loving it. And they were one of the best bands that I've seen open. They're a band you absolutely want opening up for you because they're going to get the crowd going, just straight up energy. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know their music, so for me, all of the songs really just kind of blended and kind of sounded the same to me. But it was all just like straight up energy, and the crowd was pumped up, and that was just really exciting. So it made me really want, like, I would absolutely go see them again, but I really want to check out their music because, I want to give them a fair shot, because without actually knowing their music, like I said, it all kind of sounded the same to me. I didn't hear much variation, and the vocals were, definitely screaming or harsh guttural vocals where you really couldn't make any words out, or at least I couldn't. And so it did seem to blend a little bit, but it was really fast paced, just pure energy and just a lot of fun. And so definitely I would check out Spirit World again. And I do want to check out their music because, I'm sure there's definitely more layers to it than what I was able to see that night. And so next up was a band that I actually have heard before, was a band called Alien Weaponry. And Alien Weaponry is from New Zealand. And what's fascinating about them is they have what's called, I think it's Maori or Maori ancestry, which the Maori people are indigenous to New Zealand. And so they sing a lot of their songs in that Maori or language. And that is super, super cool. So we went from like a cowboy themed, band to like a tribal kind of theme. It's kind of like thrash metal in a weird sort of way, but it's also just they have these like tribal chants and stuff. The weird thing about Alien Weaponry, though, was I feel like they didn't play that long. I kind of expected them to get, maybe an hour or 45 minutes. And either I was just that into it, and they just time just flew, or they really didn't play that long. Cause it felt like as soon as they got on, they did some like tribal chants. I feel like they only did like 3 or 4 songs. But yet, I didn't look at the set list afterwards, so maybe they played more and it just felt like it was only about 3 or 4 songs. But they definitely left me wanting more. And so I guess that's always a good thing. But I kept thinking, I'm like, man, they weren't on that long. So the openers, I guess it's a sign of them being really, really good, quite frankly, because it didn't feel like I was bored at any point. I wasn't just, twiddling my thumbs, waiting. Sometimes when you see like an opener that you're not really into and they go, we have 3 more songs left. And everybody goes, was not the case. It was definitely not the case on this particular show. Because they could have said, hey, we've got 3 more to go. And I'm like, yeah, bring it on. Because the openers were pretty solid. So next up, it was time to get to Avatar. And Avatar, couple things I should note. The one thing I want to really highlight is the fact that Johannes, the lead singer, has so much energy. And I have no idea how he does it. He's got the scream vocals, he's got the clean singing, but he's like all over the place. He's all over the stage, just completely, owning it. And it's like when he's not clean singing or doing or even harsh vocal singing, he's like headbanging like no other. Like with the rest of the band too, but I feel like Johannes is just giving it like that extra level of just like, but it kind of lent itself in the fact that like their whole set was, I feel like it was over 2 hours long. It was definitely a long set. They played a ton of songs. I want to say it was like 17 or 18 songs. I don't think he stopped at any moment. Like we did see him like go and, grab some water and stuff like that, which was kind of cool because he had like a gas tank that he was like drinking from. But for the most part, it was like song after song after song after song. Even he had some moments in front of a piano where it was literally just him while the rest of the band was taking a break and whatnot. He just never really had an opportunity to take a break. And he just seemed like the Energizer Bunny. He just kept going and going and sounded amazing. Like he had just an amazing voice. Just mad kudos to Johannes and really the rest of the band too. The band is fantastic, but Johannes won me over. I have to say, I just absolutely won me over. The other thing that really won me over was the stage show. They, I didn't know what to expect. And I'll be honest with you, most of the shows that I see, usually the band just has a backdrop, and if it's a band that's been around for a long time, you'll get like an LED backdrop, which is cool. But most of the bands just have like the typical banner type of, backdrop, and then they just play. And with the exception of seeing Powerwolf at that same venue, Powerwolf had a decent setup, but it was very stagnant. It just was there. It didn't move or anything like that. Whereas Avatar had all these like moving parts. So the very first song was the Captain Goat song. And so it was all black, and you just hear this like, this ship, you hear water and stuff like that. And then the band kind of like floated in from the back. And it was really fascinating because they were on something that clearly had wheels, and I couldn't see any, tech people behind, like kind of pushing, because you would think at a venue like that, you don't have like electronics to where you're getting all this like intricate stage work and stuff like that. It's just usually just one stage, but there was platform on the stage that was just like moving forward. So it gave this impression like they sailed in, and it was just, super cool. The other thing I noticed was the drum set was broken in half with two different like drum risers. So in between songs, they could like split the drums, and then something could come in from the background and go back and forth. And then they would put the drums back together for like the actual song. There was also movement as far as the lights go. They had different lights on different poles that kept moving in the background. And I have no idea how it was moving because I didn't see any like stage hands or anything that were like moving them back and forth. So there was just a lot of movement on the stage, which I found to be super, super cool because it was so unexpected. I just didn't expect a big, stage show in a small club. If we were in an arena setting or something like that, absolutely, but it made me realize this is a band that absolutely needs to be in arenas. But in America, being in a small club, they did everything they could have possibly done to add all kinds of like theatrics to the show. And it was just so much fun. I was blown away by that. And so I would absolutely go see Avatar the next time they come to town. If they're coming to your area, you should absolutely go check them out because it's just, even if you don't know the music, and I'll be honest with you, I only knew a couple songs, that I had done reactions to. I'm not that well versed in Avatar, and I thoroughly enjoyed every bit of it. And so take it from me, if you're on the fence, go see this band because they're fantastic live. The one thing that I do want to point out before I end this video is the crowd. The crowd, I always say this, is like, the heavy metal crowd is by far the nicest crowd of all genres of music. I've been to country shows, I've been to pop shows, I feel like I've been to every kind of genre show. And by far, the metal audience is the best. They're just the nicest possible people. The energy is always good, just nothing but positive vibes. Even in the mosh pits are always super friendly. There's just a camaraderie. And I'm sure if you're watching this channel, because you're also a metal fan. So at this point, I'm preaching to the choir. This particular crowd, I will say, was fantastic. They were very friendly. They were, everything you'd kind of want them to be, except for one thing. And this drove me nuts. And it's just a pet peeve because it's actually more, I guess it's more on me. More pet peeve, I would say, from my perspective. And I'm just throwing this out. I'm actually a tall person. I'm 6'2", so I usually don't have issues where people are standing in front of me. And I'm very cognizant of people behind me that are shorter than me too. A lot of times I'll try to move to where I know that they can at least try to see a little bit. It really all depends on where I am. Sometimes I'll even give up my spot for a person who's shorter so they can see, because I can see over them. So I am very cognizant of that. But for some reason at this particular show, I kept getting like people that were like taller than me in front of me, which is no problem. Once again, I kind of expect that. But here's what my pet peeve was. I think it was for alien weaponry. There was a person that was basically in front of me that is like my height, but you could still kind of see around under normal circumstances. But this person had like really, really big bushy hair. And nothing wrong with that. Hey, do what you got to do, all that kind of stuff. But I would suggest that maybe if you're going to be in a crowd like that, you maybe pull it back a little bit. So that way maybe somebody can see over the big bushy hair. And to make matters worse, and once again, you're supposed to have fun, headbang, do all that kind of stuff. But when you're headbanging and you have big bushy hair, all you're doing is putting your hair on other people, mainly me at this point. So not a fan of that. And so after alien weaponry, I decided to move. And so, because let this person have a good time. I'm not trying to interfere with their world. I'm just going to, do the right thing probably and move. So I did. I moved a little bit over, and a little bit further up, but also off to the side a little bit more, which was perfectly fine. I had a perfect view for Avatar, I thought. So then, as luck would have it, there were people that were in front of me that were in a different spot, but then somebody went to get drinks and all that kind of stuff. And then they come back and they were then right in front of me. And it was a female this time who seemed to be about 6 foot or something like that. So really tall people in this crowd, I should say. And this time she had her hair pulled in a ponytail, which perfectly fine. But once again, every time she was headbanging, the ponytail's hitting me in the face. And so I just couldn't win. And so the funny thing is, I tried to get video for you guys to give you an idea of what the show looks like and all that kind of stuff. And every single time I put my camera up to record something, she would then put her camera up to record something. So, so I don't have as much footage for this particular show just because terrible crowd luck. And I don't want to say terrible crowd because once again, everybody was extremely friendly. It was just my particular luck of getting big bushy hair people, ponytails in my face, and people who were also trying to record, every time I was trying to record. So really just bad luck on that front. But I wanted to point that out because I'm always curious to see what your pet peeves are. When you go to shows, do you have to deal with this too? Am I just being the old guy, complaining about nothing? Or are you the person with the big bushy hair that says, hey, if you need to headbang and just get with the program and I'm free to do whatever I want to do, all that kind of stuff. Let me know your thoughts on this. I'm very curious to see either what your pet peeves are in big crowd environments or, what your thoughts are, how you feel about it, all that kind of good stuff. So definitely let me know in the comments. I'm very curious. But with that being said, once again, if this concert comes to your area, absolutely go. And if it's not this particular tour package, if you see Avatars coming to your area, absolutely go. Definitely worth it. Yeah, I can't say enough about them. And so just a great show all around. And so with that being said, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.